Very well. We could have a big surprise with a great health care package.
I spoke with the president, and he and I kind of came up with an idea that I think is really a breakthrough. And this would be to separate this into two bills.
There is not much of a consensus for repealing Obamacare. So I think they should actually just admit that this is not a bill that will repeal Obamacare. It's a bill to fix Obamacare.
Okay, just hours from now, President Trump's travel ban is set to take effect.
The Homeland Security Department now issuing new rules for international flights coming into the country.
With this announcement, we send a clear message that inaction is not an option.
A new interview with Susan Rice has raised some new questions.
She strongly suggests her race and gender played a role in the heat she faced dating back to Benghazi, really.
It is a week that will live in infamy in the history of CNN. And if anything, it is getting worse by the day.
People hate the media. They hate Jim Acosta going bananas at the White House press conference because the big mean press secretary won't let him turn his camera on. I'm in favor, by the way. I thought Elmo was excellent on CNN yesterday. I'm in favor of replacing Jim Acosta with Elmo at the White House press conference.
It's #1 cable morning news show live from Studio F up here on the mezzanine level. We're on the curvy couch, up those stairs, around past all the yellow and blue. And
There's Joel. Wave, Joel. Say hi. Can we talk about Joel? There he is.
Yeah.
Who's also on our couch with us this morning? Anthony Scaramucci. You decided to come to us and not CNN, Anthony.
Right. Oh, okay. Right. Yeah. I had a lot of choices there, Ainsley.
It's
First time you've talked since the story was retracted.
Oh, God, yeah.
Anthony, the good news is the president promised jobs, and you're a witness that you do finally have a job since you sold your company.
See that? I don't know.
Right.
Maybe I've got
This is great news.
Could have gotten added to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That's a good thing.
I know.
It's a good thing for the economy, Brian.
But finally off the dole.
Yeah.
Thank God.
We're going to talk about your new job in just a minute, but first let's talk a little bit about the fact that thanks to a story that CNN did earlier this week, a bunch of people got fired, and they've changed their editorial standards. They said that you were involved in a pre-inaugural meeting of sorts with some guy from a Russian investor. You said the story was all wrong, and apparently CNN agreed, didn't meet their standards. Was it fake news?
Well, was it fake news? I did meet with a person. I was at the World Economic Forum. I was in a restaurant. The person came over to me and shook my hand. I think a reporter snapped a picture. I think the first part of the fake news was senior Trump official or potential senior Trump official meeting with somebody from the Russian Sovereign Wealth Fund. But that was not a quote-unquote meeting, planned meeting, strategic meeting, anything like that. It was really an interaction with him in a restaurant.
So what is your thought as you begin to find out that you might be that official and that brief encounter was what they're talking about?
Well, first of all, look, I thought the whole thing was unfair. I think Senator Warren questioned Steve Mnuchin about it at his confirmation hearing. Again, it's more of this nonsense that goes on in Washington where you have the scandals incorporated. We're practicing the politics of personal destruction as opposed to serving the American people and focusing on the agenda.
But all of a sudden, you're the target.
But I'm the target, but the flip side is I also know in my heart and in my soul I haven't done anything wrong. Okay, so what ends up happening is if you got good character and you have a strong backbone, you can hold yourself up against these people, and that's exactly what I did.
Is that why it was important for you to get a lawyer, threaten them, say I might sue?
I think all of that stuff, Ainsley, was exaggerated. I had a couple of conversations with senior staff at CNN. I made it very clear to them that the story was not accurate and that it was a defamatory story. I reminded them about my legal background, and there's a famous case called New York Times versus Sullivan that if you're talking about a public figure and you're saying something that's not truthful about the public figure, then they have a defamatory action against you. And so this is clearly not true, and it needed to be retracted. Otherwise, I think I needed to get more aggressive. But I didn't go to sue them or anything like that. I think that got a little bit overblown, to be honest.
Well, something going on over at CNN and their parent company, Time Warner, is the fact that they're trying to merge with AT&T, $85 billion merger. The last thing they would need is a great big lawsuit right now.
Certainly that's the case, Stephen. What I will say is that they moved quickly once they realized that they got the information wrong, and hopefully this will tighten up editorial standards, not just at a place like CNN, but other places My biggest issue with the whole thing is I would like to focus on the president's agenda. I'd like to focus on what he's doing for jobs, the economy, how we're going to fix the health care situation, which will eventually implode upon itself if it's not fixed. I want to focus on his muscularity as it relates to our national security and not the politics of personal destruction. I don't look to hit anybody personally, guys, and I sort of don't like getting hit personally.
But, Anthony, the other thing is the president has a harder time doing anything if this Russia thing continues to cycle itself. He said it. There's a cloud over it, and you would be in addition to that cloud. Some would argue that you would have, wrongly, I should add, you would have had a different job had another erroneous story not been out there earlier. This has got to be frustrating for a guy who's made all his living in the business world.
Listen, I appreciate it, but it doesn't really matter to me. Like I've said to the president in our personal conversations, I'd like to serve him, like to serve the American people. The role or the job that I have is not as important to me as the overall mission. And so for me, the Russian situation, I think, is a bunch of nonsense. I've said that. I've said that on other networks.
Van Jones said the same thing.
Well, he said it, and I think it's
Big
probably
nothing burger.
that probably could be the news about the Russian story. Okay?
What do you mean?
So, I think it's a bunch of nonsense. I worked on the campaign. I worked on the transition. I think it's a bunch of nonsense. I'd like it to stop. It certainly was nonsense related to me. Right. It's probably nonsense related to others. And the big point about the whole thing is that the president's got a great agenda for all the American people.
So
Democrats, Republicans, race, color, and creed, doesn't matter. This president's going to do a phenomenal job for the American people.
What's your reaction to the way the mainstream media is covering the Russia collusion and the way that they're covering his campaign and his presidency?
Well, okay, so I'm not a journalist, but I did play one on television on your sister network. Okay, I hosted Wall Street Week, and so I have some empathy for journalism in terms of the race to get the news out and to put the thing together and beat the competition. But what I do think they have to do now is have more checks and balances in the system. They have to be more prudent about what they're saying about people. Because I think you're going to leave your own reputation behind. You're going to potentially damage the reputation of the people that you're talking about. But once you start to lose your integrity and your reputation as a news organization, people start to get tone deaf.
Sure. Well, you mentioned the president's agenda. Let's talk a little bit about health care.
Sure.
Lastly, I just want to ask one question. What was the president's reaction to you when this started coming down, if you don't mind sharing it? I know you're cool, calm, and collected, but he wasn't in his tweets. I'm wondering what it was like one-on-one.
I actually think the president is, like, this is the big irony of the president. He's got a phenomenal temperament. He's very cool, calm, and collected. I think a lot of these tweets that he puts out are quite strategic.
So he wasn't mad?
Mad,
Did he
I
ask
think,
you for
I think he felt,
clarification?
I think he felt, I mean, listen, private conversation with the president, so it's probably important to keep it private. But I do think there's some level of vindication, not just for the president, but for the entire team, that this is a bunch of nonsense. We need to focus on our agenda. We've got this phenomenal agenda that we're going to roll out on behalf of the American people. One of the best lines the president gave in the campaign, which I love, is we're going to be winning so much that people are going to get tired of winning. I think we've decided that none of us are ever going to get tired of winning, okay? But let's get the agenda out there, and let's help the American people. That's the reason why he left this unbelievable lifestyle here in the city of New York and in Manhattan to serve the American people. So let's work on that.
Let's talk a little bit about the president's agenda, health care. Republicans say behind the scenes they've got till Friday to come up with a new plan. You think that's realistic?
Well, I mean, listen, that's another thing I love about the president. He's an audacious guy. He has a very big goal as it relates to curing these problems. He wants to get the tax reform, Stephen, and so this is a critical component to that. My prediction is they will get a deal done. I do think that it could be elemental where it comes in phases, right. But I think all sides do recognize that the Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act, as it's currently configured, is going to implode upon itself. And so we need to take measures to protect that and to protect the people. And I think that's going to happen. I am confident that we're going to get a deal done. I think the best legislative aid that the White House has, no offense to anybody, is the president. Okay, this guy is masterful when it comes to pulling people together, working on a negotiation, and trying to get people to meet in the middle. I think he's going to get it done.
How close is tax reform?
Well, I think it's if we get this done, and let's assume that we do.
You have to get that done first, or put it to bed.
I sort of feel that we do because of the way the CBO works and the way, again, President's a very cautious guy when it comes to numbers. I think Steve Mnuchin is also a cautious guy. And if you look at the footprint of Steve Gary and Gary Cohn and the President, getting this done first and then rolling that out, I think is really good sequencing. and he'll win in a landslide in re-election. He gets these two pieces done. He's our president right through 2024.
I know
and I believe it's going to happen.
I know you've been appointed to this new job, Chief Strategy Officer of the U.S. Export-Import Bank. What will you be doing? What does that mean for the American citizens that are watching?
You know, I mean, the bank is an interesting thing. It's 83 years old. It's basically was set up in the 30s to frankly help the exportation of goods and services out of the United States and provide financing for people that do that. And so I'm really getting up to speed in the bank now. Ainsley, I've only been there for 2 weeks, but my guess is as a strategy officer, we're going to really try to come up with the best idea for that bank on a going forward basis, how it can help the American people. There are some people in the Congress that want to shut the bank down. I haven't had a personal
Some Republicans did.
Some of the Republicans want to shut it down. It's basically hasn't been lending any money for the last 2 years. And I think the president probably wants to have an idea of where he wants to go with it, and hopefully we'll be able to present them with an objective solution for the bank long term. But I love the people at the bank. I've been there for 2 short weeks, and it's a great community inside that organization.
But you've been in finance your entire career, correct?
I have been in finance, and sometimes on a couch, sometimes on a therapy couch. But yes, I've been in finance for the last 29 years.
You had to sell your company. You've taken a gigantic pay cut. Why did you decide public service was something you wanted to do at this point in your life?
I'm not going to sound like a Boy Scout here. I think that this president and the mission that he has is a historic opportunity for the American people. And to just have the opportunity to serve him and the American people, I think anybody in my position that loves the country as much as I do would want to do it, Steve.
Right. So, Import-Export Bank will get your new ATM card.
Export-Import Bank. I'm going to get you the logo. We'll put it right here on your...
export then import.
You got to get
send it out, we'll get it back.
Exactly.
All right.
Get it back better.
Congratulations.
Right. Hey, thanks, guys.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Congratulations, Anthony.
All right. 6:12 now here in New York City, and we've got some headlines, don't we, Jillian?
Yes, we do. Good Thursday morning to you guys, to you at home as well. Let's begin with this. Partial enforcement of President Trump's travel ban begins tonight after the Supreme Court ruled earlier this week some of it could take effect. Only travelers with close business or family ties will be allowed into the U.S. from these 6 Muslim-majority countries. But visas that have already been approved will not be revoked. The Supreme Court is set to make a final ruling on the ban in October. Brand new airport security measures for U.S.-bound flights. Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly calling U.S.-bound flights the crown jewel target for terrorists, rolling out new requirements including stricter vetting, explosive detection, and rooting out insider threats to airlines. Airports and airlines that fail to follow the rules risk an electronics ban. Let's quick look at your headlines on this Thursday morning. We'll have more for you guys coming up a little bit later in the show.
All right.
Thanks, Jillian.
You're welcome. Whatever it takes to keep us safe. Thank you, Jillian.
Big travel week. Meanwhile, coming up, this is what Susan Rice first said when asked about the Obama administration unmasking Team Trump.
I know nothing about this.
Well, then she came clean, but now she's got a new excuse, and she blames her race and her gender.
She's got to pick one.
And the only Democrat who has won an election, a special election in the Trump era, hasn't shown up for work yet. Where is he?
Right there.
All right, so as Republicans work on a better bill to replace Obamacare as early as Friday, our next guest says Medicaid reform must be a top priority, blasting it as dysfunctional and in its current form. So what needs to be done? Here to explain, Fox News Medical Aid Team superstar, Dr. Mark Siegel. Dr. Siegel, people keep saying expand Medicaid, and you're saying hold on. Fix it first.
Because nobody's looked at that, Brian. 30% of doctors like me don't see new Medicaid patients. We know that it's impossible to work with. It's unwieldy. There's too many things with it, too many bells and whistles.
Especially with the expansion. If you didn't like it before, since 6 years ago when you got Obamacare, it's probably more of a challenge.
No disincentive for overuse, no copays, no deductibles. In states that have the Medicaid expansion, emergency room visits are up by 9%. Now, hospitals like that because patients that used to be uninsured now have their Medicaid card, but they're flocking into the ERs to get services they don't often need. Did you know, Brian, that 15% of Medicaid patients are prescribed an opioid every year? Now, that's the doctor's fault for overprescribing. But Medicaid allows doctors to overprescribe, and that's one of the secret stories that we're breaking right now, is that the opioid epidemic is tied to Medicaid as an enabler. Doctors are the problem. Medicaid is enabling it.
So, Dr. Siegel, if I put you in charge of fixing it, where do we start?
Well, I'd scale it back to basic services. What does a person really need? Look, there's a lot of disabled patients, a lot of children that are on Medicaid. There's people that really poor people really need Medicaid. But do they need a wheelchair every 2 years? I don't think so. I want to scale back the excess. And then, as Medicaid Director Seema Verma has said quite smartly, let's have premium buy-ins in the Medicaid expansion states for services beyond what you need.
What does
how
that
about how about a bridge to jobs?
I'm sorry, can you tell me, what does that mean?
It means it means if you want more than the basic services,
okay,
and you have some income, okay, we're talking about the Medicaid expansion states,
yeah,
then you can pay a premium to get more than you would just freely be given. And also, we need bridge to jobs programs in the Medicaid expansion states, because people that don't have jobs, Brian, get their Medicaid card and they say, I don't want to give it up. I don't want to give up that Medicaid because I can't afford to take that job. I won't get as good a health care. Now, I'm talking about Medicaid expansion states, and I completely understand that the bill wants to peel that back. I get that. But I predict that a compromise will have to occur. I think that the Democrats and the Republicans have to come together and get a deal going where Medicaid is reformed, revamped, scaled back, and then maybe kept in those states.
Yeah, we'll have to see, because a lot of states are doing well without the Medicaid expansion, like Wisconsin, and others say,
and
like
Florida.
Ohio, we can't live without it. So someone's got to make sense of this. Dr. Mark Siegel, thanks so much.
Great to see you.
All right, 10 minutes before the bottom of the hour. Next on our rundown, she lied on all the Sunday shows about Benghazi. Remember that? Then she lied about unmasking Team Trump. Now Susan Rice says, I know why. Because racism and sexism may be to blame for the controversy. Are you buying that? We'll explain. And a disgusting display. The American flag set on fire. Who would do this? We'll tell you.
All right, 6:23 right now on this Thursday morning in New York City. We got some quick headlines for you. While you were sleeping, lawmakers were making major moves to rebuild our military to keep soldiers safe overseas. A House panel approving the nearly $700 billion defense policy bill. The proposal beefs up our armed forces with advanced weapons. It now heads to the full House for a vote. And guess who was not in the House? That would be Representative-elect Jimmy Gomez. The only Democrat to win a special congressional election this year has not shown up for work yet. He was voted to represent Los Angeles on June the 6th, but he won't be sworn in until next month due to a family conflict. House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy sent him a letter this week saying if he doesn't start working soon, he should quit. All right, Ainsley, over to you.
All right, thank you, Steve. Well, she lied about the terror attack in Benghazi. Then she lied about her role in unmasking members of Team Trump. But now former Obama National Security Advisor Susan Rice is suggesting recent scrutiny on her is due to her race and her gender. In an interview with New York Magazine, she says, quote, "What do you think? I do not leap to the simple explanation that is only about race and gender. I'm trying to keep my theories to myself until I'm ready to come out with them." So does she have a point? Here to debate this is Free Think Media's Camille Foster and journalist and radio talk show host Jamila Bey. Thank you both for being with us.
Thank you.
All right, Camille, I'll start with you. What do you think? Do you think that she's using this sexism and racism? Is she using that to blame the media for her own lies?
Well, unfortunately, it's become pretty conventional for folks to use race and gender or allusions to discrimination on that basis as a dodge to not talk about the issues that are substantive. And I don't want to overstate the case here. I am skeptical of a lot of the more overwrought claims about Benghazi. I'm a lot less concerned about some of these other things. But the fact of the matter is the reason that she's come under scrutiny is because she was a high-profile Obama official. There is zero evidence whatsoever that she has come under unique scrutiny because of her race or her gender. And it doesn't matter how many times people state the fact that she happens to be a woman or that she happens to be black. Simply stating that fact is not proof of discrimination.
Yeah, Jamila, she went on 5 Sunday shows after Benghazi. She blamed the video. That happened to be false. We learned the truth after that. She said that Bo Bergdahl, the deserter, was serving with honor and distinction. That was false. He was charged with desertion. Then Then she said during Spygate that she doesn't know anything about unmasking. That turned out to be false. She later said that sometimes she did unmask, that she wasn't leaking, though, and it wasn't for political purposes. So she lied. Those are 3 different examples of her lying at the national level. So can she blame sexism and racism?
First of all, I'm glad that Camille admits that many of the claims around Benghazi were indeed overwrought. So I know that we're dealing in fact here. What I do want to point out, however, is that the fact of the matter of Susan Rice being an African-American woman doesn't mean that that had no bearing upon how she was treated by senators, by the media, and so on. We know there's a great body of evidence and research that illustrates that women do come under more scrutiny for doing the same jobs that men do. We do recognize this, and we can look at it, you know, it doesn't have to be only an African-American woman.
Why not appeal to the facts here? There is zero evidence that there was any discrimination in this particular case. I think we can just talk about that.
And Susan Rice herself in that interview says, I'm keeping my theories to myself. Did the fact of who I am have something to do with that? Perhaps. Yeah. When we look at the way Hillary Clinton was treated, if we look at the way Nancy Pelosi is treated, if we look at the way that Sarah Palin has been treated, women do face undue scrutiny.
Yeah, this is national politics. I don't think this is particularly interesting. Let's stick to the facts here. Let's talk about the substance. You and I agree that there is a great deal about Benghazi that is overwrought. I'll tell you what's not overwrought about Benghazi, and it's the broader Libya policy and the failure of the Obama administration's foreign policy, and quite frankly, in many ways, the continuation of that.
The press secretary at the time,
Jay Carney was a mouthpiece for the administration.
Who should have been taking more of the heat.
Was the ambassador to the UN, and she was the
let me stay with our topic. Jamila, Condoleezza Rice, how do you think she was treated? Because Susan Rice said that Condoleezza Rice, who was the former Secretary of State under President Bush, that she took the same heat. She just said she's taking it worse. Do you agree with that?
I don't know offhand, to be honest. I think that Condoleezza Rice, when we look at portrayals of her in international media and U.S. media, calling her a raven and you know, the whole military boots thing, the Secretary of State of the United States had to defend a fashion choice that was actually a really fierce one. I think that looking at the way women are boxed in and the way that appearance and superfluous things actually have to be discussed at all is something that we really should be advancing beyond.
You know, Camille, I can understand when you're talking about gender, when you don't get equal pay and that kind of thing. But when she didn't do her job and when she lies over and over and over at the national level, on national television to all of us, and people died in Benghazi, why does it have to be about sexism? Why does it have to be about racism? Why can't it just be on the facts and her record?
Well, I think speculating about racism and gender, I mean, the most you can do there is speculate, and it's easy to make those accusations. But as I said, I think the real problem is the Libya policy more broadly, not Benghazi narrowly. There's been an extensive investigation into Benghazi, lots and lots of money spent, no smoking guns. It is true that they went out with half-baked intelligence and made a case that was beneficial to the administration and not necessarily on the merits. But the broader policy failure in Libya is worth talking about. The administration, unfortunately, is actually let off the hook when conservatives narrowly focus on Benghazi rather than talking about the fact that Libya is still in disarray. The Libya policy, which Hillary Clinton called smart power, but is really just failed foreign policy.
All right, we'll have to bring you back if you want to talk about that then too, Camille. We'll be glad to do that. Thank you so much, Camille. Thanks for Jamila for being with us this morning. Great to see you both.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, what's it like to come face to face with ISIS fighters? Our next guest is the one that is running into the gunfire to rescue a little girl. His powerful story and his message from the Iraqis to President Trump. That's coming up next. And the dramatic new video showing the moment a man crashes his car right into a Ten Commandments monument. Stay with us.